Welcome to the Art of Growth, where we use the Enneagram and the best tools we can find to help individuals and teams develop self-knowledge, self-awareness, and transformational habits that also apply to groups and teams. This is the last episode in a series we've been doing about the high side of each of the 9 Enneagram types. We started with the body triad, which is the type 8, the type 9, and the type 1. Last week's episode featured the high side of the heart types, which is the 2, the 3, and the 4. And this episode will focus on the high side of the head types, the type 5, 6, and 7. Often in the Enneagram world, there is a focus on the shadow side or the low side of the type that needs work. And although there is a place for that, and we have done work around that, it's often good to step back and remember the high side, remember the gifts that each type brings. So that's what we're doing in this series. Before we jump into the episode, I need to let you know that the hub of all of our work is theartofgrowth.org. If you are interested in individual coaching or team or company training and coaching, you can contact us there. You can also reach us at our Instagram, which is just Art of Growth, or our Facebook page, which is still called Enneagram Panels at this time of recording. So, without further ado, we will get into this week's episode. All right, so we're doing a series where we are talking about the high side, the gifts of the different types in the Enneagram. And we did one on the body types, the 8, 9, 1. We did one on the heart types, the 2, 3, and the 4. And so today we're going to talk about the high side of the head types, which is the 5, the 6, and the 7. So we want to talk about what the gifts are, because often in the Enneagram there is a focus on the shadow, the part that needs to be improved. But each of these types has a high side, it has a gifting, it has a thing that we need in our network, in our community, in our businesses, and we're not just talking about like romantic relationships, but the connections that we have in work environments and all of that. So we want to talk about what are the gifts of the head types.
Well, the gifts of we'll start with the 5. The gift of the 5 is that they have an ability to be very rational about life, about data, about information. You don't get with a 5, you don't get a whole lot of personal bias. It's not that they're not biased. Every single human has a bias. But the 5 has a unique capacity of separating out what is my emotion. That's not helpful right now for looking at this bit of information and being really rational about it. And so they can look at it almost as if they were distant from it, so that more objective, like I'm not that information. So it's remarkable to me that a 5 can have a conversation with somebody and ask some real interested-oriented questions about a political subject, and then come back and we'll have a conversation with that 5. And that 5 will say, oh, yeah, no, I disagree with almost everything that person said. And I will say, well, that's funny because there wasn't even a hint of that when you were with them. And I don't think they got picked up on that.
Right.
It's like, well, no, because I'm actually interested in their views. So I can really follow that along and check in with them. And I'm okay. They have a different view than I do. I don't have to have them agree with me. So there's another thing that the 5 brings is not only that their research and that their information will tend to be really good because it's pretty well thought through, but that they also bring the ability to give people space and not try to convince them or force them into a particular viewpoint or understanding of things, even if a 5 is pretty certain about their facts, and they can be pretty direct and say, that's wrong, this is right.
Yeah.
Okay? They can do that, for sure. But they don't really need to have you always agree with them or just the sense of like, emotional too deep of an attachment to any thought or idea or position. Right. They don't have that. So you feel comfortable being you and having your views and having a robust conversation, even disagreement or debate, where it will typically not get personal. And so fives can really create that kind of space for people and give some really good, robust, solid, precise, accurate information.
Yeah.
And so if you need somebody to dig up something, to know what, is this good research, generally ask a five. Most of the time, if it's in their wheelhouse, you're going to get very, very reliable data.
Yeah, there's a capacity for connection that is not dependent on agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is often rare. And a lot of times in situations, some people are, just looking for the affirmation, the people that agree with them. And they don't have that same visceral need for that kind of an agreement. And I just find that extremely respectable. There's a real honor, I feel like, in that. And I just, in general, what you find with fives is very honorable people. Because, yes, if you ask them a question and they don't know and they haven't really looked into it, they'll like, I'll get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
They'll actually look into it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll actually put forth the effort that a lot of people don't want to do, because they have no problem going into that space and wanting to look into things, wanting to dig into things, and wanting to honor the question that is asked of them.
Yeah. Yes, and absolutely. That's one of the other gifts that fives can bring is the capacity to stay long at something, at really looking at something, thinking it through, researching it, and not getting easily distracted and bouncing to something else, or the need to achieve, to climb the ladder, a need to escape and have go do something else. Or there's very little need around the five. A five can work by themselves at length and ask for very little in a company. I mean, this is why fives are loved. It's because a five will show up to work early, work all day, work till late, then leave, come back and do the same, and won't ask for anything except for privacy. I prefer to work alone, or I prefer to work in an environment where I'm not as distracted by other things. So,
because good work is a reward for them. The capacity to do good work, the space created in order to do that good work, is a reward for them. That they appreciate getting to do that. It's such an interest to them to get to discover that thing, to create that thing, to make that thing exist, to figure that thing out, is a reward to them. And so to have people like that in a team, there's a connectedness to that. And I think that in that is actually an element of compassion that they have the capacity to hold, the compassion for the other and the work that they do, and for this and for self. And I think that's something that is, we talk about the triangles sometimes that are on there, and on the traditional Enneagram, it doesn't have the five connected to the two. But if you have the equal triangle that we use sometimes in the harmonics, there's this connection point between the five and the eight and the two. And so often I find that in the heart space, fives do look more like the two, and they have that compassion, even though it comes out through so much of that work and what they're willing to, the effort they're willing to put into that space. But there is a heart of that in them.
Yes, the way a five will express their desire to help, their desire to, if it's in a relationship, romantic relationship, the way to love, oftentimes comes from it'll come through the headspace. So it's I have a thought, I have a way of seeing this. Now, perspective is big for fives.
Yeah.
So it's, let me give you a different way of seeing that. If you saw it this way, right? Now, not every type translates that as love and as helpful. But it is coming from the five.
Yeah.
And if they give you something, for them, that's a gift. And so, you talk about, that's one of the strong gifts that fives can give is if you're stuck and you can't think of a way out, the five will give you a different perspective. And that is one of the unique gifts that they give. So companies treasure that, where it's like, okay, we've thought about all kinds of ways around this, it seems that, and a 5 will bring something up. Well, did you think about this? Or maybe there's more research, or maybe if we study this. And so the 5, it's really in the area of perspective, and and the other thing they bring to, I think, is consistency. So that ability to know what you're going to get day in and day out from the 5.
So good,
consistent.
Yeah.
So they're the rock to a lot of in times when things are unsure, where people feel insecure, where the company's going through organizational changes, where the family's hitting a crisis point. The 5 is the rock,
cornerstone,
consistent,
totally.
And that's a real gift, Joe.
Yeah, totally. All right, so let's talk about the gift of the 6. Since they're called often the loyalist or something, they're a lot of times people think immediately of their capacity for being loyal, for being connected, for wanting to stay in connection in that collaboration with team, and it's a very us motivated people.
They are. They're very much the type that tends to, even introverted 6s, where you'll get a 6 that tends to like to be more alone, and because of a particular wing type and a subtype, they'll be much more of the one that tends to stand back. Even that highly introverted, more private type 6 still has an attention to, is everyone being treated fairly and justly? And if not, that troubles the 6. There is a kind of an attention to the underdog and ensuring that everybody's getting fair and equal treatment in this space. Yeah, you talk about somebody that's a good manager, safe manager, a safe person. It's like 6s are that type, and so they will look out for the person that's not being looked out, that's being overlooked by a company or at school. My son, who I suspect is a 6, if you were to see a kid sitting by himself at school, what would you be likely to do? And I asked him several different questions from possible different types and the way they would respond to it. It's like, would you assume that he wants to be alone and doesn't want to be bothered? Or would you think he needs somebody to sit with him? And would you leave your group and go sit with him? And he said, I would leave my group and go sit with him.
Wow. And
I thought, okay, it's not a definitive answer as to whether you're a 6 or not, but it's an indication, because 6s tend to see things that way as, that person shouldn't be alone and that person shouldn't be left out. And so we want to make sure that person is part of what's going on here. And 6s will do that, which is why they oftentimes end up in middle management roles, and where they can both see, which is a great capacity for the 6, understand and see the vision of the company and of the boss while holding hands with the underdog, the person that could be left behind in this whole process. So they can do both, and they tend to want to do both. They're the bridge. They want to hold those two together. So
that's a good word. I think there's a bridge, and I think in a 6, in a lot of ways, is a bridge of connection, since they do have that us value system, that us, the we go together, like the we rise together, kind of a feel, and we can do this. They also are just incredibly great at thinking things through and making things safe. They often talk about the 6 doing like disaster planning, and how there can be a low side to that. But there's also this capacity to see around the corner the thing that someone else might be missing. There's this capacity to kind of go through the different scenarios and go, like, did you think about this? Like, did you miss this? Because if we make this turn that you want to take right now, just be aware that it's going to leave these people here behind.
Oh, yeah.
And there's this foresight that they have. They have a communal foresight for stability that I think not everyone has.
It's been called discernment too for 6s. Like, they have the capacity to pick out like where the danger spots are, like what's going to happen here, and who might be someone to trust or not trust in deal making. Like, if you're about to make a deal, bring a 6 along with you, particularly if you don't know the other person. It's like, because they're going to look and pick up really quickly on there's something wrong. I'm not quite sure what it is, but there's something wrong, and we need to dig a little bit more. They do have an attention to that, which is a potential, I've heard from CEOs who said, yeah, my 6 executive has kept me from making bad deals.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm indebted.
Yeah.
because they picked out on something I didn't see, and I would have moved forward, but they kept us from.
And they saved us millions.
They saved us. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's not to be undervalued. It's to actually be highly valued as a gift. And as a contribution to all environments, I think.
Yeah, and I think their connection to their most intimate relationships has that value as well as the us value, the team mentality. We're going to figure things out together. For all of the concern and seeing dangers, there's this capacity to hope for good things.
Always
yes. A hope
yes.
for a better thing that could come because we could do it together. I think those things go hand in hand, and because of that imagination, they have that hope.
Yeah, I've talked to 6s before about this. Like, so I'm married to a 6. I've joked about this with teams, corporate teams, like who have a 6 and a 7 in leadership together. Like, the 6 is going to start at what could go bad. Mm-hmm. You as a 7, me, you're going to start with what could go good, what could go right. And you're both going to start from complete opposite ends, right? That does not mean that the 6 is a negative person,
right?
Or that they're a pessimist, right? It does not mean that there's something wrong. What it means is that you're starting at two ends, but you're both working, and you both need to work towards more of the middle, because that high side of optimism, or type 7s, type 3s, even some type 8s sometimes can just be like, we're going to make this happen. We're going to move forward, right?
Yeah.
And like, whoa. There's a 6 that's saying, hold on. Can we meet somewhere more closer to the middle, where there might be something you need to think about that you might not be thinking about, while they're also making their way towards the positive.
Yeah.
To go, well, I'm leaving the negative because that's my first part. But once I see that and I figured out a plan and all the possible ways that things could go wrong, and I've got it in my head, now I've got a plan for some of that, then I can start to move towards the positive, right? But you need that, because if the thing goes south, the 6 is the one that's going to say, I gotcha, because I already thought of some of these things. So let's start with this plan, that plan, or the other plan. And they're pretty good in that space. Yeah,
and when they say, they hear the vision of what could happen. They go, that could happen. Like, that is possible. And I see the potential of that, but it won't happen unless we deal with this. It won't happen unless we take care of this thing that you're not paying attention to. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's possible, but only if this. It has the optimism, and it follows vision. It wants to follow vision and optimism, but it doesn't do it with like blind naivete. Mm-hmm. It does it with a more sober and cautious approach to life, mm-hmm. which is, it's good. It doesn't get as blinded or blindsided by some of these things. But what's funny is when they do get blindsided, when something does happen, I've heard them say, well, I'm okay then too, because then I just start working out that problem. Mm-hmm. And the capacity to stay, the capacity for faithfulness in that place mm-hmm. is very admirable.
Oh, yeah.
And helpful.
Yes, and because they've already imagined the worst case scenario, and it can happen, and in their minds it may as well just have happened because they've been able to play the entire thing out in their minds, that when it does happen, if it happens, when it happens, this is okay because we've already played this out. Right. It's just one of the gifts, forecasting, the ability to see and plan accordingly. So head types do this, forecasting, kind of thinking forward, thinking in the future. But they're also loyal, very loyal. And they give their loyalty as a gift. I'm choosing to be loyal to you and to this organization. And that loyalty is wonderful because you can rely on the 6.
Yeah.
And they do have an attention that tends much more towards the group and loyalty to the group, loyalty to the individual, this individual person. So if it's a one-on-one kind of experience with the 6 where they're loyal to that single individual. Well, then you can count on that. Totally relax and rely upon the 6 to be faithful to you. That's a remarkable gift that they do bring to relationships.
And since they're on that 3, 6, 9 triangle, they do have the line to want to see it succeed, but it's not a me first success. It's an us first. And they have that line to the 9 where they do have a good capacity to see from the perspective of the other, not just the danger around the bend, but the person, like I said, who's not in the room, to be inclusive of the voice that might not be representative and speak up for that voice. I think they often are a voice that speak up for justice. They speak up for the underdog, like you said. They speak up for some of those people that need spoken up for.
Yes,
and I think that's a really
and they're moved by
thing.
Compassion. They have a lot of compassion.
Totally. And
for them, they will drop everything to go and serve the person that they've committed their lives to.
Yeah.
There's no boundary. They will go to the end.
Cross oceans, absolutely.
Yes, for people. So wonderful gift.
Yeah. So talk about the gift of the 7. I mean, it's so easy for you to talk about all the high sides of yourself.
I think we could just sum it up by saying we are the gift.
We are the gift.
We are the gift to every other type.
Oh my gosh. There is so much that's great about like the 7 because there is optimistic fun. The first thing I think about the 7 is the synergy of the 7. I can take things from totally different sides, from different places, and I can put them together and I can assemble something that is new. They do have that optimism. They do have that idealization. They do have that imagination for the possible, and they can see it. They can like see the possible in the future, and it pulls them and it drives them. And when a 7 is excited about something and they're pulled towards a good thing, they pull people with them because people go, oh, I want that good thing that you're seeing. And there's a natural attractiveness to the 7 in that space. There's a natural draw to want to be a part of that good thing that the 7 sees.
It's funny. I never knew that about myself. When I was in my 30s, I was working for a church, and I never knew that I had this until one day my pastor asked me to do something that was clear to me that he was using my influence and my ability to inspire to try to get something that was difficult done in the church. And I laughed at that moment. I thought, oh my God, I think he's using me.
But in the best way possible.
Yeah, and
right?
I was like, I'm totally okay with it. Like,
totally.
it's just like, please do. Like, this is fun for me. So, I was laughing because it was both funny and it also felt good. Like, I do like that I can do that. So long as it's for a good purpose. I felt like if it was being used in a way that I was totally thought was bad, I wouldn't, then I'd be offended by it. But it had good end to it, so I thought, yeah, absolutely, I'm glad to do that. So yeah, inspiring. I think the 7s that I know in my life are ones that tend towards a lot of inspiration, and they kind of it's the food they eat. But it's also the kind of fruit they produce in their lives. Like they want to inspire other people, and that's one of the things that they really enjoy doing. Similar to the 5, I think they also like to bring perspective. And so one of the gifts I think they bring to the world and think that it's that everybody needs is perspective. If you had a way of seeing things in a positive way, I mean, there is a way forward. You would then feel so much better and, be happier. So, it's the joy component piece of it is one of the things that 7s all tend to feel responsible for is to make other people happier, to make themselves happier, and then also to kind of lift the environment around them to be more upbeat as well.
We've had several people, 7s that we've talked to or that have been on the podcast that talk about how, their friends call them when they need a positive reframing of a situation they're struggling with. And that it's not phony. It's not a false reframing.
Right.
It's a positive reframing.
Yeah.
A lot of times people do like, well, this person's an optimist and this person's a pessimist, but I'm a realist. Like, all of those can be real in functional time and space when
Sure.
they're engaged
Yeah.
with. And I think the capacity to reframe things in a positive way is a total gift of the 7. A lot of times people go to the 7s when they need a pep talk, when they need a pick-me-up, when they've just gone through a breakup and they need someone to take them on a night on the town for distraction and fun and to talk about something else, because they can pivot so quickly.
Yeah.
They can turn on a dime and go in a totally different direction. Like, you want to talk about that thing? We can talk about that thing and I can reframe it for you. You want to totally go off this subject and I'll take you on this like other little adventure over here so you don't have to think about that for time.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
We can do that too. There is such a gift in the 7 when it's in its healthy space, because it can do that and it doesn't feel phony. It doesn't feel put on. It doesn't feel naive, but it feels like, oh, it's this positive vision is actually just broader than what I was able to see. And I think the perspective that they actually bring is the capacity to widen. Some types are able to narrow and focus.
That's good. Yeah.
I think the 5 is really good at sometimes focusing down in its foresight.
Yeah.
But the 7 has this incredibly wide foresight. Like, it sees like all of these things are actually possible. And if we take the right steps, like, we could actually get to it. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I hadn't think about the widening effect, because because that's very true. That's sort of like a core feel. Like when you said widening, it's like, that echoes in me, because my sense of limit is like so the lower side of the 7 is many people have talked about, is the a real dislike for limitation and like a fighting compulsively against limitations. Right. On the high side, we can widen. In the right ways and see all the different possibilities and perspectives and ways of moving forward and see the bigger vision. That's a really good point there. I think vision, ability to see. And I think also the things that you mentioned, being able to help people kind of get out of their darkness, and I didn't know until the last maybe 4 years, that was one of the things that the 7s could do. But yet I now reflect back and I think, oh, that's always what I've done. Like, I do this with my son now. If he's having a bad day, I'll be there with him in that tough space of like, I've had a hard day with homework or whatever, or with schoolwork, and then homework was tough. And I don't know why, but I just start to get the giggles. And I get it probably right around the time that there's been enough of this darkness in the space. And then I'll just start to have these really humorous, stupid things come to my mind.
Sure.
And then I'll do it with him, and he starts laughing, and pretty soon he's snapped out of it. And that's something that I get a lot of joy out of as well as a 7. So, to see, and I think every type, when you're moving in your strength, you're both enjoying the strength that you have, and you're enjoying the effect it has on other people.
7s love to see people play because they love to play. And a lot of types actually have a hard time engaging with play. And there's now all this research being done about play and how we need play, and it increases the imagination and the good feelings in our body and stuff like that. And like of course there could be a low side of that. Of course there could be a distraction, but the high side is this capacity to play, the capacity to engage with the joy of the world and the wonder that surrounds us. And like, hey, look at that! Isn't that amazing? Yeah. That celebration capacity is something that like makes everyone else go, oh yeah, that is a really beautiful thing. Like, oh, that is possible. Oh, I'm not locked into this one little small viewpoint. And all of those things that the 7 brings, like, I think widens. And when they're in a healthy space, they bring the best kind of widening without it going out of control. But it's this capacity to move forward towards ideal or an optimistic or a beautiful approach to something. And that is an unbelievable gift. Yeah.
So bring to mind the type 5 that is in your life. Maybe it's somebody you work with. Maybe it's a family member, a friend, a classmate. Maybe something that comes right to mind is the ways that they can be distant, they can be aloof, be inaccessible, maybe hard to read. And the effect that sometimes that has on you. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with the fact that you feel that way. Just notice it. And see if you can now move even more deeply into that, to the place of gratitude for the gift of the 5, their consistency, stability, the way that they can help you see things in new ways and get unstuck, perhaps. The reliability that you've learned to rely on, to trust, to count on, and more. It may not be the way you want to be loved all the time, but again, see if you can press in more deeply and get to the place of gratitude and love and feel that at a deeper level. Feel that in your heart. Feel that in your body. And if you can picture them in this moment, a simple thank you. Thank you for being reliable. Thank you for being consistent. Thank you for your perspective, the gift of your perspective. Thank you for providing reliable information that I can make better decisions off of. Thank you for expressing your love in that way. And now in this moment, see if you can think of a way where you bring yourself to actually saying that to this type 5. And just a simple thank you. Thank you for being a person I can count on. Thank you for being one who gives me great resources, great information. I appreciate that. See what it will do for you and for them. As you bring the type 6 to your mind, maybe the first thing you think of is how they can be neurotic, how they can be concerned about a lot of things, how they can be too much maybe spin, and that is the thing that comes to your mind, maybe negative. See if you can push past that and bring to mind the gift that they bring. See if you can bring to mind the ways that they have actually protected you, how what they suggested, what they warned you about, turned out to be true. And that faithfulness to you protected you and kept you from making a bad decision. It was good. See the ways that they have shown you compassion by being there in a practical way, ready to serve you, ready to help you with something, give you information that you need. Whatever way they did that was them expressing their compassion, their love for you. See if you can appreciate their loyalty. And see if you can appreciate them as a person, the entirety of who they are. And if you can envision them in this moment, if you could say thank you. And now, if you could bring yourself to maybe saying something to them personally. Even maybe play it out in your head how you might say thank you to them for being faithful, for being loyal, for protecting you from danger in some way. For helping you even accomplish the desires, the dreams, the goals that you had. That their attention to what could go wrong is part of what helped you to accomplish what it is that you accomplished. And now bring the 7 to mind. Maybe some frustrations are there for you as you think about the 7's need to always be doing something new, chasing something. How tiring that can be, how unsettling it can be for you. And see if you can bring your attention to the gift that they are. The gift of joy that they bring, the gift of perspective, of seeing things in a way that can lift your spirits, of giving vision. Maybe annoying at times because it seems like, why do we need this? And why is there something new? Or why is it different from the plan that we've always been working at? Maybe it also helped to broaden it, to widen it, to make things even better, more successful. And see if you can bring yourself to appreciate that, to receive that. And maybe it isn't the way that you always want to be interacted with, but maybe if you can tune into the love that this individual, this 7, is communicating in the way that they're designed as a 7 to communicate love. In this moment, maybe you can imagine them and say thank you. Thank you for the gift that you bring. Thank you for being you as you are. And now see if you could maybe say that to the 7 at some point this week. And see what it will do for you and for them by showing gratitude.
So thank you so much for joining us again this week. We have been developing our own Enneagram test. And if you would like to help us out and be a guinea pig, give us some feedback on the beta version of the test, you can email us through the website, theartofgrowth.org, and contact me, Jim Zartman, specifically, and I will send you a link and would appreciate any help you can give us as we continue to develop the test. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And if you leave us a review on iTunes, it helps people find the show. And we very much appreciate any time we get a review. It's very special to us. We enjoy hearing from you. If you have questions about team training, corporate training, individual coaching, couples coaching, please reach out to us at theartofgrowth.org or on Instagram or Facebook. This show is produced by me, Jim Zartman, at Talkie Record Studio in Lynn, Massachusetts. Thanks again for being part of this work, and I hope you have an amazing week.